there is one thing we want everybody to feel and think when they hear our mix, and that is, wow. But how do we quantify and explore exactly what that impact is? You know, that smack, slap, boom, bap, whatever you want to call it. Well, I've given myself the challenge of putting together a course on the topic that does exactly that. This means deep research, planning, peer engagement, and I've got some curriculum already penciled out. This video is for me to dip my toes and look into what's worked for me in the past as a research. So today I'm going to be breaking down my mix on the song Take Me Away by the artist Jazz. I remember the look on Yak's face, the producer's face, when we mixed in the studio. The feel, the vibe, it was all right, and I had a grin on my face ear to ear. The mix sounds fucking bonkers. It was just one of those moments, you know, you have those moments in the studio and you're like, oh man, that's magical. That's what it was. So today I'm going to break down the following with clear ABs and actionable steps you can take away for your own production and mixes. Also, if you want to follow along and get exclusive behind the scenes as I research, plan and prepare curriculum for the course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well as my newsletter in the link below. The newsletter is where I'm really going to give more behind the scenes stuff because not everything I'm going to have the time or effort to make into a video, but you'll get to follow along some of the notes, some of the research and resources I'll be gathering to put together and, you know, arrange for that course. So first I'm going to play this section back, as this section is what we're going to be going over in this mix breakdown, and it just slaps. It sounds so good. Take a listen to this.
It's getting too hard out here. I need a break from things, it's clear. Oh, I'm drowning in this atmosphere. Take me away from here.
Did you hear that? So first, the foundation of this mix is that bass line and the kick, because those two together, that kick is just 4 on the floor, but that bass line is funking around it. So I'm going to show you something really cool. I'll play that kick and bass, and then we're going to go into Isotope Audio Editor, because we're going to get a really good idea of what's actually making it feel so good. And it doesn't actually have to do with the mix per se. It has more to do with the production, but let's just have a listen to this. Okay, so let's go over to Audio Editor. What's going on here? Let's zoom into the lowest fundamental of this bass line. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, so the low fundamental here is around 45 hertz-ish thereabouts. Let me just move this over so you can see in the bottom right corner. Around 45 hertz. The kick, however, the lowest fundamental, is about 25 to 70. So we've got a little bit more, we've got about an octave more of sub-extension in the kick. Now that naturally gives better separation. So what we've got is the first degree of separation is in frequency range. So 1 octave below, you've got still an extension of kick, so it still feels through, and then you've got the bass slightly above that. The real magic, though, happens in the rhythm of this bass line, because not only is it playing on the beat, it's also syncopated off the beat to push that rhythm forward. Now, I'm not a producer, I'm not trying to do a production breakdown, but these are things we need to listen for when we're mixing. Take a listen again. See how it pops up throughout the phrases? What that is doing is it's separating, giving itself clarity by two means. So the first one is by relationship in frequency. So that the fundamental of that kick, the lowest it extends down, is back down to 25 hertz, and the bass is starting around 45 hertz, so almost an octave there. And then you've got it displaced not just in frequency, but also in time, because you've got a bass that is syncopated. So the arrangement of this inherently is really good. So the first thing to take away from when you're actually starting a mix is to understand that relationship. What's driving the rhythm? What is filling out the space? How are they relating to one another? Are they stacked on top of each other rhythmically? Does that mean you need a good unison sound and not necessarily trying to carve out space for either of them? Or are they moving in opposition to one another in order to drive the track forward like this one is? So when you start a mix, when I started this mix, I was already conscious of this. And this is what you have to be conscious of when you start your mix. How does the kick and bass relate to one another, both in pitch, so in frequency, where that low fundamental is, and in time? Very important. First thing is thickening the bass. Because that bass is slightly higher up than where the lowest fundamental of the kick is, I wanted the sub in the bass, especially those syncopated notes, to fill out the low end space. I didn't want it to be heavy kick drum and then light bass, and heavy kick drum and then light bass. I wanted it to be heavy kick drum and that bass keep funking through it and pushing that rhythm forward. Take a listen to this. I'll turn off the parallel channel I'm going to show you so you can just hear the kick and the bass together. I really wanted those upbeat or syncopated notes to fill out and feel thick and fat. So I've got a parallel send here to here, and I've got an R bass on there, and R bass basically just accentuates those subs a hell of a lot. You've seen it before, it gets done. The EQ6 is just stopping those upper harmonics from coming through because I just really want that sub to thicken out. And then I've got the L1 limiter slamming the shit out of it, and we can just monitor that sub channel separate to the main. And that's just going to fill out the subs underneath the kick because they're both going to sum together with the main bass, and it's going to create a boost. So if you're curious what R bass is doing here in Plugin Doctor, I'm pretty sure it's just a bandpass filter in parallel. So you can bring it down, and then as you bring it up, it pushes it in parallel there, and you also get some harmonics as a result of that as well. So it's an interesting plugin. It's not necessarily the choice I'd make now, but it's what I did in this mix, and there was a reason for it, and that was basically the relationship between the kick and the bass. So let's have a listen with it off and on, and then feel that low end in the bass, those subs thicken out. So I mentioned I wouldn't use R bass if I had to do this again. I'd actually do this differently. And the reason is because if you look at my latest video on does phase effect mastering and the way EQ filters and phase rotation affects the construction of waveforms, R bass does a full polarity rotation on that fundamental frequency, which is good in the instance of getting that boost and that thickness. But then when you use it in parallel and sum it back with the original bass, you lose a little bit of that tone. So if I had to do this differently, and I've got this set up and I'm going to show you how I would do it differently, is I would use Pro Q3 in a linear phase mode doing a band pass filter. Okay, that means you will get a little bit of pre-ringing, but at least when it's the main signal sums back in with the bass, it's going to be a much stronger, thicker bass. It's going to be hitting a bit harder. And then that goes into I Heart New York, which is by Baby Audio. I love the spank just set to the 9s on this because it just makes everything pump like hell. And then that goes into TDR Katalnikov, limiting relatively hard. And take a listen to this. I'll turn this in and out, and you'll hear that bass, just the thickness of the bass. Actually, I'll play it in solo, and you just hear what it's doing now. It's much more effective at filling in that low end. Play it with the kick and the snare. Let's go there. There. It just punches more. That low sub has a bit more of a thump to it. Now when you hear it with the actual bass, you'll see what I mean. I'll put this in mute, and then I'll turn it in when I'm ready. You ready for this? This is wild. Just feels thicker. It's filling it out with more weight. That's how I'd redo it. So for you guys, if you want actionable steps, if you want to fill out the low subs of the bass, filter them in parallel, saturate, compress. That's what I would do to the subs if you're trying to really create a consistent fat low end to blend in with the main bass signal. So the next thing was making sure that bass would carry through on smaller speakers. And what I did for this is use Calvin Tone Shaper. Now this is a preset I created when I was looking into the pattern behind the iPhone speaker and designing a filter around that to help clarity on it. And it's my iPhone parallel saturator. And basically what it does is it filters out the very lowest subs and the top end, and then saturates this up to about 3 kilohertz. So have a listen to the parallel signal here. It's just adding harmonics in that mid-range. And then that's just blended in parallel. So I'll turn that on and off as I need to. Have a listen to this. I'll play it with the kick drum and snare. Okay, so that's the bass done, but what about the kick and the snare? This drum stem I have, it's actually a kick and snare drum stem together. How can I get this to absolutely slap? First, I'm going to show you, then I'm going to tell you what I did, because this sounds bloody wild, all right? We'll do before and after, and I love the before and after on this. Okay, so what's going on here? All right, I've sent out in parallel the kick and the snare together to this parallel chain. And on this parallel chain, I Heart New York is spanking the shit out of the signal, like absolutely beyond repair. And the reason why I like that, it just adds a lot of bite. If you want to emulate that, it's a 5-to-1 ratio, compressor, super fast attack, super fast release, super low threshold, blended in parallel. That's what it is. Literally, that's what the I Heart New York compressor's ratio setting is. I think it's negative 21.5 is the threshold when it's spanked all the way up and the parallels up. So yeah, that's what you're getting from this. Just take another listen. It's distorting, clipping, it's adding that bite to the top end. And then Andrew Sheps uses lo-fi, adds 3rd and 5th order harmonics. I learnt it from him, just 0.2. That's all the little harmonics you need to introduce on top of that. And then I like the snare imaging, so I just boosted the air of the snare out on the sides in parallel just to give it a bit more space. That was my concept behind the processing of this, and that was just basically slam the shit out of the drums and blend it in. Now, if you want to have a listen in context, I think it's important. So let's take a listen to this, just this kick parallel before and after.
It's getting too hard out here. I need a break from things, it's clear. Oh, I'm drowning in this atmosphere. Take me away, take me away. It's getting too hard out here. I need a break from things, it's clear.
It just makes everything just snap, which is good. Now, again, you can emulate this in parallel, super fast compression, a little bit of distortion, and the imaging was more a creative thing that wasn't necessarily affecting the punch. It was just me trying to place things in space within the mix. And the final thing which I felt helped the rhythm of this was this reverb I put on the guitar. I'm going to just play this reverb in parallel with the kick and the bass, and you hear why I think this is a pretty funky sort of thing to fill out the impact and groove of this. If you can hear what it's doing, that's good. If you can see what I've done, that's even better. But basically, I've got these chords here, which are really nice chords. They're and I love the way it was feeling, like it just plays on the beat. And I wanted to add some texture. I didn't want it to feel like a big reverb that was just sort of like washing everything out, because this is upbeat, it has to move. So what I did is I automated the send, so the transient of each sort of note sent to the reverb channel to trigger that reverb, and then the reverb would sweep up in between on the upbeats of everything. So take a look at this again so you can see it. It's just a general Valhalla vintage verb. It's super long, sustained, 7.5 seconds, but it just fills out that space really nicely. So let's play everything we've went through before and after, so we can hear before and then all the processing we've done afterwards to hear the slap to the smack, everything that makes this just move. This song really holds a special heart in my place. So revisiting this and going through some of the things I did in the session to make the drums pop, to make the bass move, to make that groove fit and feel like it was just slapping, was a lot of fun. And if you enjoyed this, here's another video I think you will just absolutely love. And make sure to subscribe, like, leave your thoughts in the comments below as well. And until next time, take care.